Okay, nice to see everyone. Nice to see everyone. Chag Sameach, Moadim Lesimcha. And tonight's class is going to be a special class, different in style. Hi, Yehuda. Hi, everyone. Nice to see everyone. Okay, we still have a couple more jumping on. We're starting right on time today. I wanted to share a couple experiences I had over the Chag, which I'm sure you may enjoy. And then I want to go through some important halachot, some laws that are going to take place for now, for the next couple days, and even hopefully further. Okay. So first I wanted to wish everyone a Chag Sameach, Moadim Simcha. I hope you had a great Pesach Seder. It was definitely different for us all. But I want to say that I take this Pesach Seder that we have, that we just went through the first 2 days, as a blessing from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a blessing from God. Because think of it, whether you were just with your spouse, just the two of you, or whether you were just with your children, or as sad as it may be, whether you were just alone by yourself, when have you ever had that opportunity to do that? To do the Haggadah in whichever way you did. Normally you have many people, you may have guests, you may have strangers, which is beautiful, which is, I guess, the great point of Pesach and the Seder. However, this year was very different. This year everyone did adapt in their own way their Pesach Seder, and we have to be grateful for God for that opportunity. I could say on a personal note, the Seders that we had, especially the first night. The first night's always easier than the second night because you're still not, as we say in Syrian, you're not hadged from the matzah and the wine yet. You still have some appetite for it. Already by the second night, if you ate all the quantities that I suggested, as the Halacha says to do, I guess you're not feeling the same enthusiasm the second night. However, that first night, my wife and I looked at each other when we finished, and it's not like we finished at 10 p.m. We finished late. We finished well past midnight. We both looked at each other and we said that was the best Pesach Seder we ever had. And that may not mean much to you, because those of you who know, those of you who spend Pesach Seders with us, especially my parents, my children, my grandparents, my siblings, we've always had the best Pesach Seders, like every year, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. This year was different. This year, because the focus was primarily on our very own children. And sometimes we lose focus. What are we doing for the Pesach Seder? Are we focusing on the outside when we may be focusing more on the inside? And that's what God gave us the opportunity this year. For those of us who did it with our children, especially our young children, the focus was directly on them. For those of us who spent it just with our spouses, the focus was on one another. And those of us, unfortunately, who had to spend it all alone, the focus was between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that was an opportunity that hopefully we'll never have another one of, but since we did have it, it's something that we should cherish and really, really be thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to God for. I want to mention two amazing things that happened over Pesach personally. This was, I believe, don't quote me on it, but I believe it was around 4 p.m. the eve of the Chag. That's like 3 hours before the Chag. So listen to what type of a call, I guess, a rabbi gets before the holiday. Rabbi, I live in Mexico, and my mother's been home alone for a month already, and she has no food. She doesn't have what she needs for the Pesach Seder. So the first thing I asked, well, does she have matzah and have wine or grape juice? She said that's what she has. Matzah and some wine and grape juice. Besides for that, she needs her produce, she needs food. So I go, okay. Send me her address. Let me see what type of magic I can do to put it together. And thank God, I hang up the phone with her. She's like, my mother is over 80 and she really can't leave the house, and she hasn't, and we want to keep her safe. She's all alone. I say, send me your address, send me your number. Let's see what I can do. So I get off the phone. I look at my wife, because whenever I need help, I look to my wife. I say, Sarah, what can I do to fix this? What can I do? So she says, hey, listen, why don't you call her by Weinstock from the Young Israel? Maybe they have meals. Maybe they have a system that you can take advantage from in order to help this person in their great time of need. Perfect. I call Rabbi Weinstock, great tzaddik. If any of you know Rabbi Weinstock, you know how committed he is to the Jewish community. And those of you who don't know him but do live in Florida, I would highly suggest to get to know him. He is absolutely a tzaddik, a righteous man. So I call him up and he's like, Rabbi, you caught me at a good time. I say, why? He says that he's driving around Hollywood checking the Eruv, which will enable everyone to carry on the upcoming Shabbat. And he has one last box in his car of a fully prepared Pesach Seder that he had prepared for those who would be needy or would not be able to leave their houses to get it. He says, Rabbi Laredo, it's your lucky day. Let's meet and let's get it to you. So I said, Baruch Hashem, 2 things good happened. Number 1, I called the rabbi. Number 2, or really number 1, I listened to my wife. That's always number 1. That's always the right thing to do, okay? So Baruch Hashem, I went and, give me a second. Baruch Hashem, I went, I met him, I picked him up, I brought it to the lady, and in the meantime, my wife, Tzadeket Eshet Chayil, she's not listening, so you could speak about the praise of someone when they're not listening, that she posted on a special chat, anyone who has some fruits and vegetables or anything they want to give, there's a lady, 80 years old, she's been home, would you like to drop it off at the following address, leave it outside just so she could sanitize it before we bring it in? To make a long story short, there were some amazing people in the Hollywood community who did bring some fruits and vegetables, some close packs of meat, some amazing essentials for this lady right before the Chag. So not only did she have everything she needed for the holiday, she even had extra, and she thanked, and I told her, don't thank me, thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and thank the beautiful community that you live in. So that was one thing I wanted to share with you. It didn't make any sense. Who calls a person 3 hours before the Seder? This woman's like, do you remember me from Mexico? We met. I'm like, I was there for a day. I met hundreds of people, but okay, yes, I remember you. And she's like, my mother is in Hollywood, and thank God we were able to fix that together. So that was one great thing that happened. I wanted to share with everyone. Another very nice thing, and for those of you who have children, especially who have baby boys, do realize the importance, the significance of the 8th day of their birth, after their birth, and that is the day of the Brit Milah. Normally, women, they are on a special schedule that they try not to give birth on Shabbat. They realize the complications, they realize that it may not be the funnest day to give birth, although it may be a very holy day, but most women don't give birth on Shabbat. There's a specific family in Hollywood, I'm not going to mention their name, the wife has, I don't know how many kids, well over 5, 6, 7, 8 kids, and most of them were all born on Shabbat. So what happens to a baby boy who is born on Shabbat? The Brit Milah, the circumcision, is the following Shabbat. So my dear friend, his name is Yosef, he calls me up, he says, Rabbi, we need to do a Brit Milah Shabbat, and so it was. Yesterday, I hiked a good 25 minutes each way. It was humid. It was beautiful for me to get in the mode of the mitzvah. We walked over alone to the house. It was just the father and the mother and the other children and the babies, and we did the circumcision yesterday. And in one hand, it was very sad that there was not a minyan. Normally, there's a 10-man quorum that we can do kaddish, but nevertheless, we sang. We named the baby. The baby's name is Michael, and everything was very, very, very beautiful. And that was a highlight because, as I said, most of the time Brit Milahs are not on Shabbat, but this was a beautiful occasion to, even during this very, very hard time, fulfill the mitzvah of doing a Brit Milah, of circumcising our firstborns. Sorry, not only our firstborns, circumcising all our boys on the right time, B'ezrat Hashem. So that was 2 very, very nice things that happened. Obviously, the highlight again was the seders. I hope that your highlight were the seders yourself. We have to be honest, we got a lot of good sleep in, even though we went to sleep very late, but we got a good nap almost every day, if not every day. And we're very thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for that. Okay, so enough hearing me chitter-chatter, and let's get down to business. Nice to see all of you jumped on a little later, and let's start. Let me just give you an outline of what we're going to speak about over the next 45 minutes or so, and then we're going to go through it. Number 1 is we're going to address the different changes in the prayers and the tefillot that we have starting Shabbat, and then even that we had starting today and moving forward. That's the first. The second is we're going to discuss the laws of Chol Hamoed. what is Chol Hamoed, and different laws that pertain to the Chol Hamoed that we need to know. And the third aspect we're going to speak about is the Omer, and that is understanding the Omer, the background of the Omer, what we observe, why we observe it, as well as laws that pertain to the Omer, as there are quite a bunch. So we're going to try to cover that as quick as we can, in a very clear manner. Any of you have any questions, you could try to signal to me, and I'll try to respond as we go. If not, try to remember your question for. I'm gonna stop at each segment. So meaning after every segment, I'll stop, and if anyone needs to unmute themselves to ask a question, it would be our greatest pleasure to try to answer. Okay, so the first thing we're going to deal with is the change in prayers. Let's start with the Amidah, with the silent prayer, because that's, I guess, the most important changes. In general, we're going to have two changes being taken place ever since, well, one change happened on the first day of Passover, and I'll explain. The second change started taking place as of last night, Motzei Shabbat, and the third change is something that we started adding as of Shabbat as well. So it's as follows. The first is from the beginning of the Amidah, and this will be in the second blessing. If any of you have a Siddur, I would highly recommend to open the Siddur at this point, any Siddur, because we're going to be speaking about specifics that, unless you're very familiar with the Siddur, you will need to follow along. And these laws are quite important if we want to fulfill our obligation of prayer in the most correct manner. So the first is in the second blessing of our Amidah, and this is after we say Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham. You could look at any Shachrit, Mincha, Arvit. It doesn't matter which tefillah you're looking at. Right after that first blessing, we move into the second blessing of Atah Gibor Leolam Hashem Mechayem Etim Atah Rav Leoshia. And at this point is where the change is made. Instead of doing Mashiv Haruach Umorid Hageshem, which is said all winter season long, we now switch to summer mode, and we say Morid Hatal. So instead of bringing down these strong winds and rain, we're asking God for dew to come, because that is the proper blessing and what we need for this season. I guess depending on where you are in the world, you feel the season a little stronger. I know down here in South Florida, it got a little hot, and very interesting, over Shabbat it did cool down a little bit. We appreciate that, it's beautiful, but weather's doing great over here. I know my family in Montreal has said they've been taking some nice walks, and the weather's also gotten a little hotter, and everyone's enjoying it. So this is the time of the year where we switch. Always on the first day of Passover is when, for Musaf, meaning after Shacharit, is when we switch to Morid Hatal. If Musaf you missed, again I'm talking in retrospect now, but if you Musaf you still said Mashiv Baruch Morid Hageshem, that's fine, you don't go back. But from Mincha and on, we do change, we will go back. Meaning, if a person, let's just make it very simple, today, Shachrit, Mincha, or Avit, it doesn't matter what, or moving forward from here on in, if a person does the regular Mashiv Haruach or Morid Hageshem instead of Morid Hatal, you have the following options depend on when you catch yourself. Okay, it's not like, oh, you could just continue going. No, you have to be very mindful with this part of the prayer. If you catch yourself right away, you said Mashiv Haruach or Morid Hageshem, you caught yourself, no problem. Just say the words Morid Hatal. If you didn't catch yourself and you kept on going, as long as you're still within that blessing, before you said Baruch Atah Hashem, if you caught yourself before you said Hashem's name, before Mechem Etim, then you go back to the beginning of the right back to Morid Hatal. If you do say Baruch Atah Hashem, end off, Lamdeni Chukecha, which is a verse in Tehillim, when we make a mistake mentioning Baruch Atah Hashem and it's not the blessing we wanted to make, then saying Lamdeni Chukecha fixes that for us, and then we're able to just continue. So you'll say Lamdeni Chukecha, and then you're going to go back to Atah Gibor Leolam Hashem, and then you're going to say Morid Hatal properly. If a person will say Baruch Atah Hashem Mechayeh HaMetim, unfortunately, we would have to go back to the beginning of the Amidah, the beginning of the silent prayer. And anywhere else you catch yourself within the Amidah, and you are certain that you said Mashiv Haruach Morid Hageshem, or even if you're in doubt, if you did not say the Morid Hatal, you're going to go back to the beginning of the Amidah. This is a very, very important thing. This, I guess, God made it this way on purpose, that we would be mindful in our prayers, that we wouldn't be on auto robot or autopilot, all 365 days of the year, there are changes here and there in order to keep us mindful and concentrating in our prayers. So that is the first change, and it's a severe change. When I say severe, meaning if you did not catch yourself before the end of the blessing, you will have to start at the beginning of the Amidah. Anytime we start at the beginning of the Amidah, we have to make sure that you don't need to take your 3 steps back and 3 steps forward. All you need to do is wait in your place, wait there for 4 or 5 seconds, and then start again. There's also no need to say Hashem Sfatai Tiftach Ufi Agi Tilatecha. You could just go right to Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu V'Elokei Avotenu. Okay, that's the first change. The second change is going to be the change for, instead of Barech Alenu, to Barechenu. And this is the Birkat HaShanim. Let me count 3, 4. The 9th blessing. The 9th blessing is also going to be changed. And this is, again, everyone in proper respect to the Siddur that you're using, whether it's a Sephardic Siddur or Ashkenaz Siddur. I'm going to go with the changes of the Sephardic Siddur. That's what I have in front of me. But there are also changes when it comes to the Ashkenaz Siddur. But there is a major, major change in the Sephardic Siddur, being that instead of it being a long paragraph of Barech Alenu, you have a much shorter one of Barechenu. Again, over here, this is indicative of the change of the season, and it is important that the smaller paragraph, the summer season paragraph, is the one that is said. If a person does not say the smaller one, and unfortunately does say the big one, as long as they didn't finish the blessing, they can go back and just go Barechenu. Even if they did finish the blessing of Baruch Atah Hashem V'rech HaShanim, or anywhere else in the end, all the way to the end of the Amidah, before they do their last Yule Ratzon, right before they take their steps back, if you caught yourself, no problem, you go back to Barechenu. You don't need to go back to the beginning of the Amidah. If, for whatever reason, you already started taking your steps back, or you finished your last line of Yule Ratzon, then you're going to have to start at the beginning of the Amidah, even for missing this small paragraph, mixing it up with the long one. The last change that is important to make sure, and this only applies to the duration of Chol Hamoed, is adding in the Elokeinu V'Elokei Avotenu. And that is the Ya'aleh V'Yavo, and that can be found in the blessing of Ritzeh. This blessing is the one which we find right before Modim, and as we do on Rosh Chodesh, as well as on Chol Hamoed, we add in the Ya'aleh V'Yavo. This Ya'aleh V'Yavo we're adding in for the holiday of Pesach. The Pesach holiday that we are adding in is Yom Mikra Kodesh, and not Yom Tov Mikra Kodesh, because it's only Chol Hamoed, as we're going to speak about, and it's not the Yom Tov itself. So as you'll see in your Siddur, it's going to say Beyom Chag HaMatzot Hazeh, Beyom Mikra Kodesh Hazeh, not Yom Tov. So important that we make that mention. If a person forgets this blessing, this insert, then also, if you catch yourself before the end of the blessing, you're at V'atah b'rachamecha harabim, anywhere there, Baruch Atah, no problem, you still go back to Elokeinu V'Elokei. If you catch yourself after you said Hashem's name, say Lamdeni Chukecha, Elokeinu V'Elokei Avotenu. If you said Baruch Atah Hashem HaMachazir Shechinato L'Tzion, still no problem, right there, add Elokeinu V'Elokei Avotenu, finish the whole paragraph, and don't go back and say the blessing of V'atah b'rachamecha and then Hamachazir Shechinato L'Tzion. Just right over there, go and continue with Modim. If you said the word Modim, or if you catch yourself anywhere between Modim and the end of the Amidah before you take your steps back, you're going to go back to Ritzeh, and then continue all the way till the end. Okay? Maybe it's a little bit intricate, but that is the laws of when it comes to the Amidah. When a person is in doubt and they're not sure, did they do Mashiva Ruach or Moridat Tal? Did they do Barech Alenu or Barechenu? Did they add in the Elokeinu V'Elokei, the Ya'aleh V'Yavo, or not? When in doubt, in this scenario, we are stringent to go back and redo. And that means even after the Amidah has been finished. We can't be crazy and neurotic about it. However, if we considerably have a doubt if we did it or not, we need to go back and redo the Amidah. For the Ya'aleh V'Yavo, it's going to be always, because we never go 30 days with saying it, but in 30 days from now, once we've already hopefully gotten accustomed to the Moridat Tal as well as the Barechenu, then when in doubt, we don't need to go back, because after praying an approximate 90 times that Amidah, we won't, it's going to probably be our new habit and we'll get used to it. Okay, that's when it comes to Amidah. Another couple important changes that we have is that we are doing Musaf every day during Chol Hamoed. That was today, tomorrow, and Tuesday. Besides for the first holidays in Shabbat and the second 2 days of the holiday, we're obviously doing Musaf, but we're also doing Musaf during Chol Hamoed. So if you're using a Machzor, a special prayer book for Pesach, it's definitely in there. If you're using a regular Siddur, some of them have them at the end. Make sure that throughout the Musaf, during these intermediate days of Chol Hamoed, you're not saying Yom Tov, because it's not Yom Tov. It's again Yom Chag Hamatzot Hazeh B'Yom Mikra Kodesh, and not Yom Tov Mikra Kodesh. So you'll note that the Musaf is identical to the one we did every single day of Pesach, all 8 days, or 7 in the Israel, but 8 days in the diaspora. The Musaf is identical verbatim, except for the word Tov, meaning it's not Yom Tov from Shabbat, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but the first 2 days and the last 2 days, we do add in the word Tov. That's the only difference of the Musaf all holiday long. Again, besides for Shabbat, where we add in the words of Shabbat, and it's Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbat Yisrael VeHazemanim, and Shabbatot Limnucha, for those of you who understand what I'm saying. But besides for those Shabbat inserts, the Musaf is identical the whole Chag long, except for the Tov word used on Yom Tov and not on Chol Hamoed. Okay, next thing is for the men, the completely across the board, the Sephardic Jews do not wear tefillin on Chol Hamoed. That would total up with a total of 8 days of not wearing tefillin. That's from the first day of Pesach until the last day of Pesach. Ashkenazic Jews, there's difference of opinions, different customs. Some are of the opinion that they do wear it only on Chol Hamoed, the intermediate days, that would be Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and others are of the opinion that they don't. Why would some wear or some not wear? So just like on Shabbat and on Yom Tov, which then themselves are an ot, they are a sign, therefore we don't need an additional sign, meaning that the Talmud explains that there is always a need for 2 different ots, 2 different signs, as 2 different witnesses to testify our allegiance to God. One of them we always have, and that's our ot haberit, the Brit Milah, the circumcision that we have as men. And the second is our tefillin, which the Torah refers to as an ot, a sign, as well. Shabbat also is an ot. It's also a sign. So there's no need for 3 signs. So that's why we don't wear tefillin on Shabbat. Yom Tov is similar to Shabbat, so we don't also. Now Chol Hamoed, the intermediate days of the holiday, is also, according to most opinions, a sign in and of itself, and therefore we don't wear tefillin. Others do have the opinion to wear the tefillin without a blessing, because it may not be the same significance of a sign. So that's the reasons for it. Again, all Sephardics don't, and Ashkenaz, some do without a bracha, and some don't at all. Next is Hallel. We are doing Hallel all holiday long. The first 2 days we did Hallel with a blessing, because we did Hallel Gamur, the entire Hallel. From Shabbat all the way till the end of the holiday, including the last 2 days, we're doing Hallel without a blessing, and with the missing out or skipping out those 2 longer paragraphs of Lama and then Ahavti. So those 2 are skipped out, and it's not the complete Hallel. There is a Moroccan custom to make, and the Ashkenaz custom as well, to make the bracha of Likrot Hallel when you read the shortened version of Hallel, but that's again up to based on your custom. Next is making sure to read Tehillim 107 twice a day. That is before Arvit and at the end of Shachrit, meaning right after Musaf. Tehillim 107 is the Tehillim which is specific to the holiday of Pesach. We spent a whole extensive class last week explaining it through the insights of the Zer Shimshon. And anyone who has not listened to that class, go back and listen to it. It's very important. Tehillim 107 Kuf Zayin is said every night before Arvit and every morning after the Musaf prayer. One thing just that resonates with me, and I wanted to reiterate that to all of you, is the 3rd verse in Tehillim 107 says, Ume'aratzot kibetzam, that God comes and He gathers everyone, Mimizrach, Mimarav, Mitzafon, Miyam, from all the directions. The Zer Shimshon said, what he asks, what is God gathering together, pulling together? What God is pulling together and He's gathering is each and every one of our individual prayers. Meaning, as those four people, the sick person, the person traveling in the desert, and the person traveling through the ocean, and the person in jail, what the common denominator between all four is that they're all alone. They don't have a minyan. Nevertheless, and he also continues there, Shimshon says, that they each have a unique specific prayer to them at that time of need. Nevertheless, they don't have a minyan. They're all alone, and they have unique requests from God. God, ume'aratzot kibetzam, from all over the world, gathers them together and answers them, giving them the power of prayer, just as if they were in a large group of people. So every single time I'm reading that line, again, that's the third verse in 107, I'm having the intention, God, please accept my, Yaakov, your humble servant's prayer as an individual who, unfortunately, is not able to attend a synagogue and not able to pray at the minyan. Please accept my prayer and all other Jews' prayers at this time of our need, even though we're all individuals. Please consider us as one large unit. So, if there's one thing you can have in mind, please have that in mind. It is absolutely important for God to answer our prayers in the most potent and special way. The last part of prayer that we're going to speak about this evening...
1 second.
Yes, question.
Can we say it at night?
Yes.
Tehillim?
Yes. Yes, this
Because
Tehillim...
normally we don't.
Right, Tehillim, that's part of prayer. Thank you, Aviva, for the question. Can this Tehillim be read at night? The answer is yes. Any Tehillim that's part of the prayer ritual can be said at night. Besides you're allowed to say Tehillim at night on Shabbat, on Rosh Chodesh, on Yom Tov, and even all Chol Hamoed. So this week, you can read as much Tehillim at night as you want because of that elevated spirituality that there is and lack of judgment din that there normally is at nighttime. Nevertheless, any time that Tehillim is added to prayer services, to the ritual, it is able to be said at night. So 107 should be said, like I said, before Arvit, before the evening services, and after the Musaf services. That's twice a day. The last part of prayer... Any more questions? One more question? No? Okay. The last part of prayer that I wanted to speak about was the Birkat HaMazon, the blessing that we make after we eat a meal. The only time we'll be doing Birkat HaMazon now is not for bread, rather it's our poor man's bread. It's our lechem oni, it's our matzah. It's our glorified crackers that gives everybody different effects to their stomachs. And at this point, it's something we're all going through. Well, it's either one way or another, so we can speak about it. And for that matter, after we eat a bread meal, meaning a matzah meal, we will do Birkat HaMazon. In the Birkat HaMazon, we're going to add in Ya'aleh V'yavo also, and that will be right before the V'tivnei Yerushalayim Ira Kodesh, B'mira B'yamenu. We add in Elokeinu Elokei Avotenu Ya'aleh V'yavo over there. Again, when it's Chol Hamoed, we just say et Chag HaMatzot Yom Mikra Kodesh. But on Yom Tov, we're going to say Yom Tov Mikra Kodesh. Okay? Same like in the prayers. Anyone who did not add in the Ya'aleh V'yavo in the Birkat HaMazon, besides for the first night or the first 2 nights in the diaspora, will not have to redo Birkat HaMazon and not have to go back in any way, because we don't have an obligation to make that meal. The only obligation will be the first night or the first 2 nights where we will have to eat the matzah, and then we will have an obligation. Okay, next part is... Okay, that's the end of prayers. Are there any questions with regards to anything I mentioned with regards to the prayers, or anything else prayer related? You may unmute yourself if you have a question, and then we'll proceed if there are no questions. Or you could show by raise a hand. Aviva has a question. Okay, Mikael, bechavod, yeah.
So on Yom Tov night or Yom Tov day, if you have a doubt or you forgot to say Ya'aleh V'yavo on Birkat HaMazon, you have to re-say Birkat HaMazon?
No, so Birkat HaMazon is never redone for Ya'aleh V'yavo. Let me take a step back. The only time you have to redo Birkat HaMazon for something you omitted is if the reason why you are doing the Birkat HaMazon is for a meal that you were obligated to do. For example, Shabbat Birkat HaMazon, you missed the Shabbat portion, since we have an obligation to have 3 meals on Shabbat. The evening meal, the morning meal, and Sudah Shlishit. Therefore, you're going to go and redo the Birkat HaMazon if you left out the Retzeh V'Achalitzenu, the Shabbat portion. Besides for Sudah Shlishit, because it's already towards the end of Shabbat. However, Yom Tov, we don't have an obligation to make a bread meal, except for the first night of Passover, as well as the first night of Sukkot. The first night of Sukkot, we have an absolute obligation to eat in the Sukkah a bread meal, and therefore, if you miss the Alev Yavo, then you need to redo it. That's only the first night, or it's really the first two in the diaspora. Same things with Pesach. We have the mitzvah, the obligation to eat matzah only on that first night by the Seder. So that's why I said only time you need to redo Birkat HaMazon if you did not, or if you were in doubt if you did the Alev Yavo, is for the evening meals of the first two nights of Pesach. Clear? Any other questions? All right, speaking about all this matzah, who wants some matzah pizza? I had for lunch already. Okay, next. Yes, Yohan, you have a question?
Yes, I was on mute. Since this year we only have 3 days of, I think it's 3 days of Chol Hamoed, right? Because Shabbat was middle.
Well, Shabbat was also Chol Hamoed, but it was Shabbat Chol Hamoed, yeah. So we have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
So for the parasha that we need to read on Chol Hamoed, Shabbat, did we only have to read the one that's for Shabbat Chol Hamoed and the part of Chol Hamoed?
No, good question. Okay, let me explain the question for everyone, and then I'll answer it. The question is if we look in our Siddur, we have 4 days of Chol Hamoed Torah reading that is supposed to be done. The 3rd day, the 4th day, the 5th day, and the 6th day, because the 7th and 8th, if you're in the diaspora, is already Yom Tov. So out of those 4 days, you're only always going to have 3 of them, which are, or most of the time, unless Shabbat falls out on the holiday. Anyways, in this case, like Yohan's saying, you only have 3 of those days that are Chol HaMoed, because Shabbat Chol HaMoed, we did a different Torah reading. So the answer is that if you're following, I mean, we can't get too deep into it, but if you understand what I'm talking about, you get it. Anyways, so the Torah reading that we read this morning was Chol HaMoed day 4. Okay, because day 3's of a weekday Chol HaMoed is skipped because we had Shabbat on Chol HaMoed that day. Okay, so if you understand what I mean, so basically today we're going to read the day 4's Torah reading, day 5 tomorrow, and day 6 on Tuesday. In essence, to answer your question, Yohan, the 3rd day's Chol HaMoed weekday reading will be skipped this year because Shabbat fell out on Chol HaMoed. Okay, any other questions? We're good. All right. Moving right along, and we are going to speak about the laws of Chol HaMoed. So let's first understand the way the Torah refers to Chol HaMoed. The Torah tells us that the first day of holiday and the last day of holiday really are the holidays, but it also refers to the middle of the holiday as a Shabbaton. So I don't know about you, but when I think Shabbaton, I think going away up north with a lot of food, freezing cold, and that's a Shabbaton. That's my Shabbatons when we grew up. To some of you, maybe going to a hotel for an NCSY Shabbaton. Shabbaton for me means absolutely no work, it means relaxing, and it means a lot of, I hear everybody, food. Okay. The Torah, by the way, does see Shabbaton similar to the way I see Shabbaton. Meaning, they are days where, in essence, you're not allowed to do melacha, you're not allowed to do work. But you are, because it's impossible to go 7 or 8 days on a total shutdown. Although the countries and the virus would all suggest us to go on a complete shutdown for 8 days in every way possible. However, we all know how that is completely impractical, especially when it comes to food and to eating, right? Jews, everything's always about food. Well, there we go. You can't go this long without cooking and without replenishing food and everything else you need to do, basically food related. For that reason, the intermediate days are considered Kodesh, but they're not considered as a Yom Tov, as a holiday at the same level as a Yom Tov. So for that reason, there are allowances, meaning, in essence, we shouldn't look at Chol HaMoed as a regular day with a couple stringencies. On the contrary, our sages tell us, look at Chol HaMoed as a day that is really like Yom Tov, but there are some leniencies. And the way in Halacha the leniencies are prescribed are there's 5 categories of leniency. I'm going to go through them super quick, and then I'm going to give a couple basic examples of laws that are permitted or prohibited on Chol Hamoed, and then maybe I'll take a couple questions on this, and then we'll move on to the Omer. I do have more to speak about on the Omer. As follows. The first category that is of milacha, of work that's allowed to be done on Chol Hamoed, that's the intermediate days of the holiday, this applies only towards Pesach and Sukkot, is anything which would be a loss, a monetary loss if not done now. For example, if you need to sell something that right now it's worth money and later it won't. For example, produce. If you have produce right now and it will not be sold over the next couple of days, well, that produce is going to go to waste. So then there's going to be a big debate amongst the Torah scholars. Is it a loss of principle or is it a loss of gains, of profits? So loss of principle, everyone obviously agrees, well, that's a loss of principle, and then you would definitely be allowed to do melacha for that. But what about a loss of gains? And to make a long story short, we are lenient even if it's going to be a loss of gains, especially if there's an imminent need. That's, again, it depends the case, depends what type of business. Is it a real loss of profit, or are you just categorizing it as a loss of profit? So again, every type of job, obviously doctors, healthcare, food industry, all of that is definitely permitted 100% to do everything. I guess the question comes with business. Well, if you don't engage in the business today, will that business be there in 3 or 4 days from now? Yes, no. Again, it's always the debate. It always depends. That's number one. Number two is anything for the need of the holiday is absolutely 100% allowed to be done, and that's obviously a very, very vast allowance over there. The third category, not applicable to today, is you're allowed to not only clean out but drill specific holes into the mills and into the millstone specifically. This is back in the day, the way they used to grind their wheat and their flour and all that stuff. It was considered to be a very professional and consuming type of work. The fourth allowance would be, unfortunately, anyone who does not have enough, whether it's money or food, to get through to the end of the holiday, and they would need to actually work to make their wage, their livelihood for that day or that week, then they would definitely be allowed to work full out. And then also anything which is tzarchei harabim, anything for the need of the population, the masses, or the community. Anything of that sort is allowed to be done 100% on the holiday. For example, anything that has to do with the mikveh, or the synagogues, or even roads, garbage pickup, anything that is for the needs of the population of the community is also fully allowed to be done. I'd just like to mention, anyone who, God forbid, it would be at risk of losing their job for not working on Chol Hamoed is again allowed to work on Chol Hamoed. That is obviously Devar Ha'aved. That's something which could constitute a loss. I want to go through a couple more, just a couple examples, and then I'll take some questions on Chol Hamoed if there are any. Anyone who owns a business, do you need to close your business on Chol Hamoed or not? Anyone who has workers, do you need to close them, tell them to not come, or allow them to come? What is the proper thing to do? So a person who has workers and their workers are being paid for their work, that is considered a loss if you're paying them and they're not working for you. So therefore, on the Yom Tov and Shabbat, we don't say that that's an allowance. But on Chol HaMoed, it would be an allowance, and therefore workers are allowed to work for you. Any type of business, any type of company or industrial business, you're allowed to have your employees work for you because you have to pay them anyways, and that would be a loss. Another question that comes up is, are you allowed to fix clothes and shoes? Let's say your shoes need to be fixed or sewn up, or not so common, but let's say clothes that ripped. You would only allow to be fix anything that would need to be used for the holiday, and not if you have other suits or other shoes, then you wouldn't be allowed to. Laundering clothes, big topic of discussion. Laundering clothes ideally is not allowed to be done on Chol HaMoed. There are some exceptions. Anyone who has children at home, children's laundry is definitely allowed to be done, because, I don't know about you, but my daughter changed, I think, 5 or 6 times today, and that's only one of them. Okay, I have 3 children. So children's clothes, as the Talmud says, all are constantly getting dirty. It's like the second they're put away, they're taken out, and they're dirtied, and they're put back. For that reason, Chazal, our sages, understood that even if you do all the laundry before the holiday, that's still never enough to last you 5, 6, 7, 8 days. And therefore, the whole reason why laundering is not permitted is because our sages said, you know what a person's going to do? They're going to come to Passover, they're going to say, I got so many things to do. I got to clean my house for Chametz, I got to prepare it for the Seders, I got so many things, I got to attend Rabbi Laredo's classes at night, I have no time to do laundry, right? So I'm not going to do laundry for the first part of the holiday, but don't worry, Chol Hamoed, I'm going to utilize that time to do my laundry. Our sages said, no. That's not the point of Chol Hamoed. Chol Hamoed is, again, a restful time, a time to learn Torah, a time to bond with your family, bond in prayer, and not to do laundry. If you did everything beforehand, and everything's being used up, so then obviously you can continue doing you can do your laundry. So that is for all children's clothes, because children's clothes are constantly being cleaned, and that is also for undergarments of adults, especially those of us who live in hot climate, where we go through a couple t-shirts and undergarments multiple times a day sometimes, and if that is the case, and you really did your laundry beforehand, you could do your laundry during Chol Hamoed. No taking stuff to the cleaners, unless, unfortunately, if you only have 1 or 2 shirts and 1 or 2 suits and they're already dirty. But if you have more than one suit, more than a couple suits, more than a couple of shirts, even though those are not the ones maybe you want to wear, but since you have some, you should not take anything to the cleaners on Chol Hamoed. You are allowed to iron. Ironing is absolutely not a problem. Last thing I want to talk about on Chol Hamoed, and then I'll take a question, is writing. Big misconception if you're allowed to write on Chol Hamoed or not. I remember back in high school, we always used to make the joke, because the high school I went to, they made us come to school. They probably changed it by now. I think, well, for sure this year it's different, but normally I think even they changed it by now. We used to have school on Chol Hamoed, and the reason for that was to make sure that we prayed, and to make sure that we would fulfill the minimum requirement amount of days that the state or the province needs us to fulfill. So that's why there'd be days on Chol Hamoed. We used always to come to school, and we always used to tell the teachers, oh, well, you could teach, but no point of teaching too much because we can't write anyways. Okay? So the rabbis used to look at us like this, and all of the Gentile teachers were like, okay, so I guess we can't learn too much. The truth is the following. Writing on Chol Hamoed is absolutely permitted if there is a need. Okay? The only thing that's not allowed to be done on Chol Hamoed writing-wise is professional calligraphy, or the handwriting of a sofer, unless there's a need. Let's say someone needs a mezuzah and there's no mezuzah, or the Sefer Torah needs to be fixed and this one it needs to be fixed for now, then that's a need and that would be allowed. But calligraphy or any other type of professional writing, that's what's not allowed. But writing notes or signing a bill or writing stuff in your agenda, all of that is allowed 100% on Chol Hamoed, contrary to the major misconception. I wanted to let that known. Another big one is shaving or cutting hair. Well, shaving and cutting hair is not allowed on Chol Hamoed. Ideally, that is the proper halacha. Again, if someone has to go to work and they'd fear they'd lose their job if they don't cut their hair or shave, really shave, because cutting hair we should have done before the Chag, then they would be allowed to. It's very rare that is the fact of matter, but if that is a matter of fact, then you would be allowed to. And anyways, now it's the Omer. We're not cutting hair all the way till after Lag BaOmer. We'll speak about that at another time. So that's no cutting hair. Nails is allowed. Sephardics will cut nails even if they did not cut before the Chag. Ashkenazim will only cut nails if they cut their nails before the Yom Tov, before the beginning of Pesach. Just quickly scanning through over here if I have any other question, anything else. You're allowed to move houses on Chol Hamoed if that is a need. Okay. God forbid, if anyone leaves jail, they are allowed to get a haircut. But that should be known that we know. Okay. Any questions with regards to Chol Hamoed before we move on to the Omer? Mikael, yeah, unmute yourself. Go.
Can you take notes for Torah?
100%. Kol shekem kal vachomer. If you could take notes in your anything else, Torah notes is allowed and encouraged, I would say.
Right? If you're a tutor for to teach somebody to teach them Torah or something like that, like for Torah, and they're asking a whole lot, but the family asks you, let's say, to teach the child, are you allowed to say yes?
Yes.
If they're paying you?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? 3, 2. All right, moving on. We're now moving on to the Omer. Okay, we don't have that long, but I think let's do a little bit of a overview of the Omer. We'll get some of the laws in. If we get them all good, if not, we'll continue after Pesach with the other laws of the Omer. The first thing we have to know is that the Omer was a barley offering which was brought from the second day of Pesach all the way till the day before Shavuot. It was a specific offering the Torah speaks about. That was an obligation in the time of the temple. What we do nowadays is Sefirat HaOmer. It's counting in commemoration of that Omer service. I'll call it a sacrifice, but it obviously didn't involve an animal. It was a barley offering. It was a grain offering in the temple. And what we do is in commemoration for that time period, we count the Omer on a daily basis. We'll speak about the different laws and things as topics of laws that when it comes to counting the Omer and what we do and don't do during the Omer. But what this time is it's a time of preparation and character refinement for ourselves to grow in anticipation to receive the Torah on Shavuot. And as we all know, anything very important in life requires preparation. And what God did for the Jewish people that very first time when he took them out of Egypt, and as well to every generation, such as ours even today, after we experience our exodus, which is Pesach, is he allows us this time to prepare for the holiday of Shavuot, for Matan Torah, for when we accept the Torah. So that is the major reason why we're not counting down. We don't count 49, 48, 47, 46. No, we're counting up, because even though we're super enthusiastic about getting to Matan Torah, right? Who can't wait to all the amazing all-night learning and cheesecake and dairy meals and all of that fun stuff, another holiday, right? Who's not looking forward to that? Everyone's looking forward to that. More seriously, obviously, commemorating the acceptance of our Torah. But nevertheless, what we are doing is we are using that time wisely. The anecdote given is, let's say a person is counting down to their wedding. They finally, after years of searching, found the man or woman of their life. And let's go on the groom side. The groom is counting down till the day, that final day, until it is the wedding where he's able to marry this most precious woman that he has found. So, when there's a month down, there's 30 days, 29 days, 28 days, 6, 5, 4, 3. It's like enthusiasm. It's like L'havdil elef havdalot, the countdown of New Year's, right? Everyone's counting down, boom, 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 boom. So it's a countdown. Why are we not counting down? Because the difference is when a person is looking to get to a certain place or a certain time, and they're looking to kill the time in between, that's when you count down, and that's a waste of time. And we know time is most precious in any Jewish concept and Torah concept. And therefore, we're not trying to kill these 49 days. On the contrary, we're not trying to let them pass quick. No, we want to use every minute of every hour of every day to its greatest potential, because we have that opportunity. So that's why we're counting up to the Omer, meaning we're counting up on the days of the Omer until the time where we receive the Torah, preparing ourselves. Now, as we know Kabbalistically, there are 7 days and 7 weeks, and every single week has its very specific trait, and every day has its very specific trait. So the first day is the day of chesed, loving kindness, in the week of loving kindness. And there's something specific to work on that day. And then there are other days, every single day. There are plenty of books. I want to show you just two that I happen to have on my desk at this point. One of them is my mom's personal favorite, and this is by Rabbi Jacobson. I don't know if you could see this in the camera. Oh, she has one also. This is an absolute, I really, really recommend it. It is very good. It's 1 page a day on something very practical to work on when it comes to your very own personal character growth and character development. It's short, it's to the point, and it also gives you a background of the tone or the mindset of the week, as well as that very specific day. It also does give you a practical exercise of the day and room for notes to take. It's a very, very nice, compact book. Again, it's called The Counting of the Omer by Rabbi Simon Jacobson. Highly, highly recommended for the Omer. Being that we're right at the beginning still, within the first couple days, it's not too late to pick one up and to do this. This is what I really like. What I've been using for years is this small book called Usfartem Lachem, which is an abbreviated version of the longer version that I have as well, which gives you these tidbits, same idea, but this is in Hebrew, these tidbits according to the Zohar, according to the Talmud, according to the mystic teachings of our Torah, what the power and the potential of each and every day is. It does a very similar thing to the previous book that I showed you, but it also, it's a different author, it's a different aspect, and highly, highly recommended on different ways to grow in our personal character refinement and being greater people, greater Jews to receiving the Torah on the day of Matan Torah. Yes, question.
Does it come in English as well, or it's only in Hebrew, that book?
Only in Hebrew that I know of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then there's one more aspect of this time between Pesach and Shavuot that I wanted to address, and this is the 48 ways of acquiring wisdom, specifically Torah. Any one of you who have a Pirkei Avot at home, the ethics of our fathers, can turn conveniently at your own time. It's very easy. Chapter 6, Mishnah 6. 6:6. Okay? If you open to 6:6 in Pirkei Avot, you will see, let me just quote it quickly for you because it is very interesting. It tells us as follows. It tells us the greatness of Torah, and one second. Okay, it tells us the greatness of how Torah is one of the pillars of Judaism, meaning that we have Torah, we have priesthood, and we have kingship. How priesthood and kingship are, biological, they're hereditary, they're based on a person's heritage, on their ancestors. Torah is open to all, the Mishnah starts off. It tells us the requirements for being a king, the requirements for being a Kohen. However, the Torah in itself is open to everybody. Everybody who wants to learn Torah can come and learn, and not only as a subject, but as a learning, growing experience, which is the most important part of Torah. And then it gives a detailed 48 step-by-step method to acquiring Torah. Now, the order is very specific, and it's very important to follow if a person really wants to learn Torah. And you can go through it at your own convenience. It is very, very important. The reason why there are 48 over here, meaning since 48 methods of acquiring Torah wisdom are prescribed in the Mishnah, therefore this time is also a time to learn, and as much as possible try to acquire one per day, leaving the 49th day a day to review before Shavuot. So there are plenty of books. Again, this book as well, Usfartem Lachem, does go through some practical ways to acquire Torah according to the 48 steps. Highly recommended. I've been teaching it for years. I have a complete playlist on YouTube titled The 48 Ways to Acquire Wisdom or Torah, where you can watch these very short classes on one step at a time. Bli neder Bezrat Hashem, this year I'm planning on putting out a podcast based on this very, very beautiful book. This is the 48 Ways of Wisdom from Rabbi Noach Weinberg. It's a couple pages a day, or it's a chapter a day, on explaining that very specific way to acquire Torah. So I'm going to hopefully do quick couple-minute of a podcast daily. Hopefully you should be receiving them soon. And it's something you could listen to the car, something you could listen to, more formal, whichever way possible. But these are, it's a very, very opportune time to use this time now between Pesach and Shavuot. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. Okay, at another time, we're not going to have time now because I did want to get a couple laws of Omer in, since some of them already started, and some of them didn't. But at another time, we're going to speak about the relevance between the Omer and Rabbi Akiva's students. As we know that Rabbi Akiva's students, 24,000 of them passed during the Omer, and that's for the reason of a lot of our mourning or signs of mourning during the Omer. I'm not going to pay attention in depth. I do have something beautiful to say about it, but I'm not going to say it now. We'll find another time to share that. We have all Omer long to share it. I rather want to jump to some laws of the Omer, first on the counting of the Omer, and then on the observances that we have during the Omer, and then I'll again open up to any questions, and we'll speak about Rabbi Akiva's connection to the Omer at a later date. Okay. Person has an obligation to count themselves, meaning, well, this year it's all more applicable. Even if you're in synagogue and you hear the chazan or the rabbi counting the Omer, you should be counting yourself. Again, unless you missed, as we'll soon speak about. This year we're all at home, we're all alone, so everyone should count themselves. We count by making the blessing, and then we count the day, and then after the first week we count the amount of days as well as weeks. For example, on the 15th day of the Omer, we will say, today is 15 days of the Omer, which is 2 weeks and 1 day. It's really good review on your math, especially on your sevens times table, just in case your children are learning them, so you know how many times does 7 fit into whatever number you're talking about, and then how many left over are there. Think about it quick, make sure you don't make a mistake, but don't worry, you got it all calculated in your Siddur as well. But seriously speaking, we do say the day as well as how many weeks and leftover days there are. Why do we do so? Because when the Torah tells us to count the Omer, it tells us as follows. It says, Tispiru 50 yom, count 50 days. But it also tells you, Shiva Shavuot tispor lach. It also tells you, 7 weeks, count for yourself. From there, the Talmud teaches us that we're supposed to count the days and the weeks. Because why else would the Torah tell it to us in both ways? We should have intention that we're fulfilling the mitzvah of counting the Omer, which is a rabbinic mitzvah. It's not a Torah mitzvah, because again, the Torah obligation is to bring the sacrifice of barley that was brought in the time of the temple. We do this blessing standing up. It's also learned out from the verse in Parshat Re'eh. Next. We do not make a blessing of Shehechiyanu on the mitzvah of counting the Omer. And why? If we remember when we were learning about the Haggadah, we said when we make that Shehechiyanu, we should have in mind the Shehechiyanu of the new opportunity to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer. But why don't we make the bracha of Shehechiyanu on the blessing or the mitzvah of the Omer? Number one is because it's only a preparation for Shavuot. Number two, because it's a mitzvah which is dependent on something else. It's not an independent mitzvah. Again, it's a blessing for the preparation of counting up to Shavuot. And third is because it's only something that we do in commemoration and there's no actual benefit from it, opposed to the holidays where we have a complete holiday or any other type of reason why we say Shechianu. There is an actual benefit. There's no benefit for the mitzvah of counting the Omer, and therefore no Shechianu is made. Women are exempt from the mitzvah of counting the Omer. It's something that a lot of women have a hard time swallowing, but it's exactly the same idea as talit and tefillin, which are specific to men. It's not a mitzvah for women. So too, counting the Omer is a men's mitzvah, just like making challah and taking it off is a woman's mitzvah. Taharat HaMishpacha is a women's mitzvah, and lighting the Shabbat candles is a women's mitzvah. This follows under one of the men's mitzvahs. Therefore, if a woman wants to count the Omer, she would be permitted to count the Omer. Again, she would be allowed to count the days of the Omer, but she should not make a blessing. That is according to the Sephardic Halacha, according to Shulchan Aruch. The Rama, for the Ashkenazim, says that a woman that wants to do a mitzvah that she's not obligated to do still can make a blessing. So Ashkenazic women can make a blessing to count the Omer, again, if they don't miss any days. Just like if they want to sit in a sukkah, which they're not obligated to, they make a blessing, l'shev b'sukkah, and Sephardic women won't make a blessing. The Omer is also a time-bound mitzvah. There's a specific time to say it, and it's a positive mitzvah. That's why they are exempt from the mitzvah of the Omer, just like Talit, and just like Tefillin, and just like the Sukkah. They're allowed to answer, and they're supposed to answer Amen, nonetheless, to a blessing of the Omer made by their husband or any of their male children. Okay, a person who counted only the days without the weeks, or the weeks without the days, meaning if a person said today's the 15th day of the Omer and that's it, or if a person said today is 2 weeks and 1 day of the Omer, they would still fulfill their obligation and they would still be allowed to count the next day with a blessing. If you did count it that way and incorrectly, recount it the proper way without a blessing. But if you didn't, and you still in one combination said it the right way, you would be allowed to continue the following day with a blessing of the Omer. Now, the Omer should never, we've mentioned this a couple times now, the only way to continue saying the Omer with a blessing is if you didn't miss any night. Because there is a dispute, is each night's blessing and counting a mitzvah in and of itself, or is it part of one larger unit? If it's a part of a larger unit, if you missed a blessing, so then you missed it. That's it. You can't continue with a blessing, continue counting without. If each one is on its own, so then you would be able to continue. Continue with a blessing. We hold that you don't continue with a blessing. Whether if you missed a night, you continue without a blessing. I hope many of you or all of you watched my video on the salt segula for the first night of the blessing. Okay, it's only salt, it's nothing else. Okay, don't worry. This was the this was what we held on the first night of making the Omer blessing, and as it's brought down in a couple of our mystical teachings, this salt now has the power to protect greater than any kme'ah that ever could be written. So very, very, very special. If you missed it for this year, hopefully you catch it next year. What I personally do with this is I take some of this and I put some in my wife's car, I put some in my car, I put some in one of my bags, my briefcase. I keep it. I put some in my briefcase for Brit Milah. I put it all over the place a little bit because this salt is, believe it or not, magical at this point when you made the blessing of the first night of the Omer, holding it. We used to, in the synagogue, distribute it out to everybody, but since we're all home and we're not, so I hope everyone was able to do it themselves. If not, next year you'll be able to, or I may be able to spare a couple grains for you for the right price. Next, I'm trying to keep it funny. Oh yeah, we have a question. Go. Now I could hear you. Go for it.
I said no question. I said I'll buy some from you.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Okay, fine.
One question also here.
Yes.
Yes, so you mentioned, Rabbi, that we substituted the sacrifices for the barley for the 49 days, correct?
We substituting a barley flour offering that was brought for the now we do the counting of the Omer instead. Yes.
Right, but in those days, the first 49, well, at least for the first week, we're still in Pesach, so but it's not considered like a grain.
Oh, very good. Good question. So, absolutely great question. Thank you, Yosef Betan, a Florida resident, local over here. he is asking the following question: how can you bring a grain, which is one of the 5 grains, which is chametz? Okay, quick recap. We're in Pesach, so it's very apropos. There are 5 grains that these 5 grains are able to make bread, and these are the very 5 grains that you could only make matzah out of. The grains are wheat, rye, spelt, oats, and barley. We just said barley was the grain that was brought for this offering, and it was done during Passover. How can you bring this chametz, quote-unquote, grain on Passover? The answer is, and it's very, I'm happy you brought it up, it's something very important to note, that all year long, all of the flour offerings that were brought on at the Mizbeach, at the altar, none of them were chametz. They all were flour and oil, and it was done so quick, giving it absolutely no time, or sometimes even water, but it was done so quick that it gave it no time to rise and to swell, to make it chametz, alluding to the importance of humility, the importance of not procrastinating, and all those other no yetzer hara, no evil inclination. That was one of the prerequisites. Another prerequisite was that there would be salt for every single offering. Salt is something that preserves. Salt, it was one of the Brit Melach, it was one of the gifts that was given to the ocean, and salt, it's a whole other topic. But to answer your question, Yosef, and that is that barley, even though it was one of the 5, it is one of the 5 grains, it is allowed to be brought on Pesach because it was brought in a way that it did not become ferment and become chametz. Okay? Good question. Great question. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Couple more laws. The time to read or to make the blessing of the Omer is after stars out. Tzet HaKochavim. Now, when you pray with a minyan, with a quorum, then you're able to make the blessing even after sundown, which is prior to that. And then you'd be able to repeat it later on without a blessing. But since we're not praying with minyan, unfortunately, yet, hopefully very soon, it's still within the Omer, we will be allowed to pray with minyan. But in the meantime, it's important that we all know to count after stars out, Tzet HaKochavim. So depending on where you live, you could look at myzmanim.com, you could look at any other app to make sure that you are doing it at the right time. Let's see if there's any more. Yes, we make the blessing and then we count, not count and then the blessing. If we did say the day before we made the blessing, you can't make a blessing that night. So let's say tonight's the 15th night again. And I would say tonight is the 15th night, whether I just say it that way or I say it including the week and day, then I would not be able to say that. I would not be able to say that night's blessing. Tomorrow night I can say it with a blessing. If someone asks you what night is it, if you counted, okay, say the night because you already counted with a blessing. If you didn't count the blessing yet, then you are to say last night was 14. And then it would be understood that tonight is 15. It's proper to have your children also count the Omer, even if they're under bar mitzvah, with a blessing. That's again if they started from the beginning. If any child becomes bar mitzvah in the middle of the Omer, they are not supposed to continue counting from when they become bar mitzvah, because the first couple days or the first majority of the days, whatever it is, even if it's one day, they counted as a minor when they did not have an absolute obligation, and after, once they do have the absolute obligation, they now is as if they didn't do the first part, so they continue counting without a blessing. Anyone who has to count without a blessing, it would be nice, again now it may be hard, but if in the synagogue, it would be nice to whoever is making a blessing, make the blessing on your behalf, have you in mind at the same time. I'm trying to see a couple more laws that has to do. Okay, that's with regards to the counting. Are there any questions with regard to the counting of the Omer before I move on to the laws of the Omer itself, of the time period of the Omer? I'm seeing anybody. Yes, we do have here. Unmute. Sorry. Go for it. Sorry. Go, Malkiel. Mikael, sorry.
If somebody counted and then made a bracha, does he have to say Baruch Shem Kod Hamoed?
Yes.
Oh,
okay, one more thing with regards to counting of the Omer is that ideally you shouldn't do anything before you count the Omer. Meaning, once the time of the Omer has started, you shouldn't do anything. The truth is, within half an hour, it's kind of like lighting candles of Chanukah or anything else. So the first thing that stars out that the person should do is count the Omer. If they have a set minyan, let's say like a 9:30, 10 p.m. minyan, so then in the meantime they could do anything else. Meaning, let's say a meal shouldn't be started before the Omer was counted. But if you have a set time to pray Arvit later on, and you're going to make sure you count then, so then it's not a problem. Okay, couple laws with regards to the Omer. And that is the very famous law of not getting married during the Omer. This only applies for the first part of the Omer, from the beginning until Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer itself can be a day that a wedding takes place, and this takes true even to someone who it would be their first marriage and they would be getting married to fulfill the mitzvah of Puruvu, of having children. Still, it should be postponed until after Lag BaOmer, or until Lag BaOmer. The only allowance is an engagement is allowed, because an engagement kind of locks the deal in, and you wouldn't want someone else to engage that man or that woman. So you could have an engagement during the Omer, but the wedding should be only from Lag BaOmer and on. Famous, as we all know, we don't cut our hair during the Omer, and that is only during the first part of the Omer, and that is for the Sephardic custom until the morning of the 34th. So the 34th in the morning is going to be the time when we could cut our hair. Don't worry, through the Zoom classes we'll be seeing our hair going very crazy, and then we'll definitely let you know when the time is. You'll see. There are a couple of allowances when we're allowed to cut our hair during the Omer. The first is if a person is one of the main three components of a Brit Milah, meaning if they're the father of the baby, or if they're the Sandak, the individual holding the baby, or if they are the Mohel, the ritual circumciser, they are allowed to cut their hair and shave for the Brit Milah. If the Brit Milah is in the morning, so they can do it the previous day. If the Brit Milah is Sunday morning, they can even do it on Friday, before, right, 2 days earlier. That would be allowed. Another is if, let's say, there is a bar mitzvah. The bar mitzvah boy himself is allowed to get a haircut and look good for his bar mitzvah, even if it's during the Omer. Music should not be played, obviously, but still it is a very happy day for that child. Another big question is, for Shalom Bait, for peace in the home, is a man allowed to cut their hair or shave? So just so we are very clear, the laws of the Omer with regards to hair cutting do not apply to women at all. A woman that has to have her hair cut or remove any other body hair is absolutely not a problem at all. This cutting of the hair business is only for men. Shaving business is only for men. So for Shalom Bait, for the sake of peace in the home, would a man be allowed to shave? Cutting hair, I guess any man could go 30 days without cutting hair, as hard as it is. But shaving, is that allowed or not? So, it's proper not to. It really is. If you may lose your job because of it, you could. If you may lose your wife because of it, you definitely could. So, if you really, really need to shave, it is brought down to try to space it out. Try to do it, obviously before Pesach. Try to do it by Rosh Chodesh, and then again by Lag BaOmer. If that is not enough and it's going to grow too quickly and it's going to be irritating and a big bother, whether it's for your personal life or for your professional life, then there is an allowance to shave every Erev Shabbat for the honor of Shabbat. If that's still not good enough, you would have to call your LOR, your local Orthodox rabbi, explain your situation and ask for a specific heter, maybe to be able to shave more often than that. Again, it's a case-to-case basis, and everyone should speak to your own rabbi when it comes to that. It's important to note the Kabbalistic opinion, according to the Arizal, is not to cut one's hair or beard from the beginning of the Omer until the end of the Omer. That means from the day before Pesach until the day before Shavuot. Again, it's only for men, and it's only if you adhere to the Kabbalistic teaching custom of the Arizal with regards to this. Nevertheless, if there is a Brit Milah, you would be allowed to cut your hair for that time. Or if there's a wedding after Lag BaOmer, obviously. You're allowed to buy and to move into a new home during the Omer, even though it's something that brings us happiness and we should be mourning the fact of the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. That's something that's needed. Even if the house needs to be painted or renovated, that is allowed during the Omer if there is a need. Wearing new clothes that need a shecheyanu is not supposed to be done. So for men it would be, let's say, a new suit. A new suit should not be worn unless there is a need, and if there's a need, then it should be a need and done for before Shabbat. So let's say Friday before Shabbat, that's when you would wear a new suit and make a shecheyanu if needed. Let me just see if I have any more over here. Yes, Pesach Sheni, which is the 14th of Iyar, is also another day which, if needed, a person would be able to shave and cut their hair. Last thing we'll speak about is music, which may be the biggest one for all of us, especially most of us, if not all of us, who took on our own at-home workout schedule because there's kind of nothing else to do. All the gyms are closed and everyone wants to stay fit. So many of us listen to music when we work out, whatever we do. If we treadmill, if we jump rope, if we push up, if we do laps in our pool, if we jump on a trampoline, if you're doing sit-ups, squats, I mean, you name it. Whatever you're doing, most people work out with music. It keeps the momentum. Maybe biking, whatever, jogging. These are all things that a lot of us are doing these days. So listening to music is something that brings us joy and happiness, and it's something that is not allowed to be done during the Omer. There is an exception. The exception would be listening to a cappella, meaning listening to music that has no instruments. Okay, there is plenty of Jewish a cappella. It's pretty scary. Some of it actually sounds like real music. Some people are very, very talented in the way they're able to use their mouths and their lips and make sounds that do sound like actual instruments. But any genuine a cappella is allowed to be listened to, even if it sounds like the real thing, believe it or not, is allowed to be listened to on the Omer. The concept behind it is that real instruments is what brings a person joy, and that type of joy through the music is what's supposed to be avoided during the Omer. Rosh Chodesh, you're allowed to listen to the music. Pesach Sheni, you're allowed to listen to music. From Lag BaOmer and on, you're allowed to listen to music. And I think that's it. Are there any questions with regards to the Omer or anything else with regards to Chol Hamoed? Okay, let me turn off the recording and then I'll take some more questions.